we devote days, months, and years to our craft. But what about preparing for life after?
After the 500 kilo deadlift, I was somewhat in a very bad place.
When the grandest show in sports comes to an end, life gets back to normal for the rest of us. But whether it's heartbreak or glory, what about the athletes?
After a contest, I'll go through a big low.
When you have something that you're so focused on, you have a schedule, you have a regimen, you have a plan, and then once the Olympics are over, once off-season comes, you're like, I'm kind of free-floating here.
Obviously, I hit a very low point in my life.
This is after you became an Olympic champion.
This is after a couple medals.
So there may be a lot of people out there wondering, how can that be? How can that be? You're so successful.
Inky.
Hello.
The post-meet blues. Not that kind of blues. So what are the post-meet blues and how can you stop them from happening? Well, basically, the post-meet blues is the idea that after a competition, it doesn't have to be powerlifting, but obviously a powerlifting meet, that's where this term comes from, but it can be any event, sporting event or life event that happens which has a real big build-up and uses up a lot of stress, be that negative stress or really happy stress, just a big release of adrenaline. It's when that finishes and then you have a big crash or a big low. There is psychological evidence to sort of back this up, to say it is actually a thing and it's not just people being wimps after a competition or event. It is genuinely a big thing, and I have the term here. It's called the contrast effect, which is basically when you have a big event and then the next day seems like the polar opposite, so it seems a lot worse than it actually is, and that's hence why you feel a lot worse. So this doesn't just affect people at sort of my level, which is fairly low in terms of powerlifting. This can affect people at the highest level.
So one thing that I don't think I've normally talked about in public is after a contest, I'll go through a big low, huge low in energy, huge low in whatever it might be. Just my feet start to drag a little bit more. Because leading up to the contest, there's all this energy buildup that goes into it, huge adrenaline. And it's like my whole life, basically, every contest I do, it feels like my entire life leads up to that one moment. And it feels like the pinnacle of everything. There's always this sensation of like, after it's done, like, now what?
So that was Martin Zlissis, and he is the second strongest man at the Arnold Classic, and he competes in the World's Strongest Man. So he explained it pretty well there, really. You go from this big high and then you get this big low, and I can only imagine at his level, which is top elite level, the crash must be pretty horrendous. So it must be really hard to manage. So how do you go about managing something like this? The answer in short is you don't really know, because it's very individualistic and people feed off different things to gain positivity. For me personally, I need to stay busy, so I've identified that I do get this, I do get the post-meet blues. So what I've already done is come up with some things that I'm going to be doing after the competition. So I want to be socializing with my friends. I don't want to spend a long time out of the gym. I want to get back in the gym, and even if it's not doing like powerlifting stuff, just socializing, because a lot of my social circle comes from the gym, so I want to be in there planning, doing things and keeping active, because otherwise that big low will get on top of me, and it will be hard to overcome that, and then really you just lose a lot of motivation to do other things. So another big personality in the strength world is Eddie Hall. He's a massive example of how the post-meet blues can affect you. He has talked about after he pulled his 500 kilo world record, he sort of slumped into the biggest depression of his life.
I think one of the biggest things after doing such a lift was the major depression. And it's like every sportsman, once you've been on a massive high, there's always a massive low. And it definitely hit me hard. You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you are and what you do. The next day, you've still got to go back to normal life and take your kids to school and go shopping, and you know better than anybody else. And I suppose that's what every athlete wants. You know, you want that superior feeling all the time. But it doesn't last forever, and that's when the depression hits. But like everything I do in my life, I set goals, I achieve them, and then I move on. I set a new goal. Otherwise, you dwell on that achievement forever.
He has talked about his own mental health issues that he's had since he was a kid. So that tied in with the fact that he was susceptible to this, what do we call it? Contrast effect. Just goes to show that it doesn't just affect Joe Bloggs, your sort of average person on the street. It literally affects everybody, and everybody is susceptible to A, mental health, and B, this contrast effect. So I think it's an interesting psychological theory. To be honest, I can understand it, knowing that I've experienced it before, and I think understanding it is part of the way to overcome it. So I think if you actually understand why you're feeling this way, and understanding it is normal, that's when you can start to understand how to combat it. So apart from making plans and keeping active after a competition in terms of helping with that sort of mental health side of things, I think actually leading into a competition, it's also healthy not to over obsess over it. I mean, this is where it's hard for people that are at that elite level, and they have to do that. They need to get into a certain zone to the point where they do obsess over it. But I think for someone like me who isn't going to go on to be a world champion, but just does this as mainly a hobby, albeit I'm very passionate about it, but it is just a hobby. I think you need to go into it's not obsessing too much, because otherwise you will put it onto this big pedestal, and then it will just make the crash a lot harder. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Don't obsess over numbers. I know I'm obviously guilty of doing that, because I'm constantly saying, I think I'm going to get this, I think I'm going to get that. But if I put too much pressure on myself, and then especially if I don't get it, the crash will just be horrendous. So I think those are sort of two guides or tips to help with the post-meet blues, as I keep calling it. But it isn't just the post-meet blues, it is for life events, big life events that are happening, and to stop that crash after. So just plan things, have things to do after that, so plan ahead, and also don't make things a massive deal. So yeah, I hope that does help for anyone that does have a big event coming up. They're sort of maybe worried about something, like really excited about something, and just something they might be a little bit worried that they are gonna get this after. There's just a couple of tips for you. So apart from that, I have been training, obviously. I went to the gym yesterday and deadlifted. It was my last heavy session now before I compete. So I hit 255 kilos for a single, moved probably at an RP 8.5. I probably had one, maybe two more reps in me, with the sort of standard back down sets of 200 kilos for a 4x4. Again, keeping the volume, like not ridiculously high, but keeping the volume in there. And that's pretty much all I did. I did a little bit of back work, obviously worked on my shoulder a little bit to keep that mobile. But yeah, like I say, that's the heavy stuff done now. I've got a couple more sessions this week, which are going to be light. So I've just got some pull squats and some light. I mean, light is reasonably heavy deadlift still. It's still 200 kilos, but no maxing out anymore. I'm not going to be hitting any heavy singles. So yeah, it's exciting. Looking forward to tapering down next week, and then it is the competition. And yeah, like I say, it is what it is. I'm going to go into it open mind. If I get what I want to get, then I do. If I don't, it's just, you know, it wasn't there on the day. So not going to put too much pressure on myself, because I don't want to have that big crash after. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm going to wrap this video up. It's quite a quick one. It's just literally me rambling, talking about the post-meet blues. And yeah, generally I hope it might help somebody that does experience this. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave it a like if you have enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Peace.